From accusing Momoa of overacting to his misguided worries about the Fast and Furious mythology, here's why Vin Diesel hates Jason Momoa. You'd think that Momoa would make a perfect match for Diesel, since they both play tough guy roles really well, but the Fast and Furious star is reportedly embarrassed by his performance in Fast X. According to insiders, Diesel has been complaining about Momoa's overacting and thirst for the spotlight, which undermine the artistic integrity of the movie. But the actor famously takes this franchise very seriously, since he isn't just the star of the movies, he's also a key producer and the guy who keeps the whole operation afloat. If he's convinced that Momoa's performance disrespected the gravity of the movie, that's a tough opinion to brush off. You may have noticed that Fast X has been getting mixed reviews, and Vin blames that all on Momoa and his acting, which isn't the most accurate takeaway from the reviews. Momoa hasn't commented on this situation, but to see his side of the story, we should take a look at his role in Fast X. For the movie, that'll set this series on the road to the end. They've brought in a villain who has bad blood with the gang. Jason plays Dante Reyes, the son of Hernan Reyes, who was the villain in Fast 5, which was where the franchise went through a soft reboot. Hernan was killed in that movie, and the Reyes family lost all their wealth, so Dante is out for revenge. He's written to be a foil for Dominic Toretto, who's a serious guy who loves his family and his Coronas. Dante is more lighthearted and a show-off, but he has a serious sadistic streak that makes him a threat to the gang. He also contrasts Dom's more traditional masculinity with a different vibe, which is just one of the things that sets his character apart from everyone else we've seen. His take on the character has earned him comparisons to iconic villains like the Joker, and just shows his acting performance is almost too good for the movie he's in. Half the reason Momoa took the role at all is because it was different from his past characters. Sure enough, you won't find any trace of Khal Drogo or Aquaman here. You can tell that Jason loved playing this character and had a great time. But does that translate to good reviews? Not really, but Jason's acting did stand out to critics. Nicholas Barber over at the BBC didn't enjoy the movie, but he did write that the movie is able to skate by with its insanity because of the way Jason's character chewed the scenery. Meanwhile, at the Rolling Stone, Chris Wagner went as far as to say that the rest of the cast was phoning it in, while writing that Momoa missed the memo and carried the movie with his crazy energy. Otherwise, the movie hasn't done very well in reviews, with a 56% freshness rating at Rotten Tomatoes. The critics' consensus on the site reads that as self-aware as it is, it's still really silly. While the movie gets credit for its enjoyable levels of stupidity, that shtick can only take Fast and Furious so far, and the story was too complicated for the kind of movie Fast X is trying to be. Still, that doesn't make it the worst movie of the series, as critics really despised Tokyo Drift, 2 Fast 2 Furious, and the 2009 Fast and Furious. While Vin is right that the movie is underperforming with critics, he's wrong to say that Jason is the reason, so what's his real problem? The clue is right there in the reviews. In the past, Vin considered Fast and Furious to be his and Paul Walker's franchise, but after Paul tragically passed away, Vin's been left to gas himself as the star. Despite the fact that Michelle Rodriguez and Jordana Brewster have been on this journey as long as he has, Vin's never considered these movies to be anything but the Vin Diesel acting showcase, and the two women his sidekicks. Over the years, we've seen that he's protective of his top spot in the series. The biggest example of that was his beef with Dwayne Johnson. The former People's Champ joined the franchise in Fast 5, and he was a big reason why that movie was considered a boost for the franchise. In the movies that followed, the writers expanded The Rock's role in the story, and it got to a point where he was basically the third lead after Vin and Paul. After Paul passed away, he filled in his role as Vin's co-star in Fate of the Furious, and that was the end of the line for him. The two began beefing on set, and that led to The Rock walking away from the series. So, how long is Momoa going to stick with the franchise? The door seems to be open for him to return. I'm not going to spoil the ending of the movie, but it does end on a pretty blatant cliffhanger. When all is said and done, Dante's still left standing, meaning that the team's conflict with him will carry on into the next movie, and possibly beyond. If Vin doesn't like having Jason around, he must be annoyed that he didn't get to drop a car on his character in Fast X. The Fast and Furious movies haven't really had an overarching villain before, but I think we can agree that having one for this final stretch of movies should make for a more compelling story. For Diesel, Momoa's roles in future Fast and Furious movies are going to seem like chances for him to be upstaged, especially since Momoa is a famously charismatic and likable guy. There's speculation that this goes beyond Fast X, and the truth is that he's just jealous of Jason's potential. If that was the case, it'd be easy to see where Vin's coming from. The guy's real name is Mark Sinclair, but he's known throughout the industry by a cheesy action movie name, and that kind of tells you everything you need to know about what kind of actor he is. Though the guy has done tons of movies since the 90s, including his debut in Saving Private Ryan, he's quickly become defined by a handful of roles. These days, he's pretty much just the Fast and Furious guy who does Groot when he has spare time. If you get someone to really rack their brain, they might remember the Triple X movies. If you're a sci-fi fan, you might also remember the Riddick trilogy, but compare that to Jason Momoa, who became famous through Game of Thrones, one of the most successful TV shows of all time, and went on to become a key actor in the Dune movies, which have also made bank. Say what you will of the Snyderverse, but folks liked him as Aquaman, and he's being tapped to play Lobo in James Gunn's DC universe. You can see why Vin is so jealous of Jason, an action star who's gone way further than him, with room left to keep growing. But Vin's beef with Jason isn't just about acting. He really does care a lot about the Fast and Furious mythology. While revving up the marketing for Fast X, Diesel did a pretty infamous interview in which he confessed that it's hard to keep the story alive. And the cherry on top of that comment was that J.R.R. Tolkien would relate to his plight. In fact, he threw it out there that Tolkien stopped writing in the Lord of the Rings universe because it's hard to continue mythologies. But Vin hasn't stopped working on Fast and Furious, which sounds like that comparison is supposed to make him look better than Tolkien. I could go on about how Vin doesn't know anything about the legendary author, but this isn't the first time Diesel has talked about the mythology of the Fast and Furious franchise. He's described Fast X as the beginning of the end of the series' mythic arc. In a Facebook Live, he talked about how he and his co-stars were trying to find the truth in the series' mythology. Now, the death-defying stunts and action of this series are mythological, but I think Diesel just means that he thinks the overarching plot of the series is serious business. That might be why he doesn't tolerate out franchise, so he must have control over the scripts. Let's see if he uses it to write Jason out. Isn't taking the movie seriously. That's why Vin Diesel hates Jason Momoa.